G'day guys, Zane here from BikeReview.com.au, and today we are out testing the 2022 Kawasaki Ninja H2 SX. Now, it's very rare that I would start out a review by saying how great the bike actually is, but this is easily one of the top 5 motorcycles I've ridden in my career, and there have been quite a few. So it's really made an impression on me that makes me want to wake up in the morning, and I can't wait to just jump on the bike and go for a ride, even if it means just riding in traffic. You know, the rideability, the sound, the electronics, everything about this bike just seems to echo what a motorcycle should be in 2022. On paper, it seems kind of strange that they would put a supercharger on a touring bike, but after riding it, you can just see that it's not all about top end power. It's about rideability. You know, before the supercharger really starts to make full boost, the bike is seriously one of the easiest bikes I've ever ridden. Especially with the 260 kilogram weight behind it, it just shouldn't be this easy to ride. Now for 2022, Kawasaki have made quite a few changes, namely this seriously impressive electronic system. It's going to take me quite a while to walk through it all, but the gist of it is that they've borrowed a few favors from the car world and they've added them to this motorcycle. So we've got motorcycling first, blind spot indicators on the mirrors. That's pretty impressive. We've got a radar at the front and the rear for adaptive cruise control, and it has like an emergency warning system when it thinks that you're going to crash into the rear of someone. It's got all the assists you could ever need: traction control, wheelie control, stability control. All of them are adjustable through this ginormous TFT screen standing right in front of me. And yeah, there's so much on this bike that it is just silly to list them all off in one go. So stick around and I'll run you through quite a few of the settings and changes that Kawasaki have made for 2022. Out on the H2 SX, and I'm met with this seriously terrifying power output, but combined with the rideability of a naturally aspirated engine, because obviously a supercharger makes more power as the pulley turns faster. So you've got this 147 kilowatts up top, but down low it's a seriously easy bike to ride. But even with all the assists turned up to max, I'm still holding on for dear life as the supercharger winds up all the boost until the motor's just bouncing off the rev limiter. The supercharger just makes some of the most insane noises you'll ever hear. When you come off the throttle, like, the wastegate will just continue to chatter until idle. While the Euro 5 muffler does censor the exhaust note quite heavily, I almost prefer the sound of the wastegate more to a loud exhaust. If I owned one of these, I'd probably throw a really obnoxious blow-off valve on it and leave the stock silencer on. Having a forced induction touring bike adds another level of enjoyment to a motorcycle category plagued with these boring and soulless machines. The supercharger will only really wind up in the mid-range, so you're left with this compliant and easy to ride bike down low. Compliant character is matched really well with the slipper and assist clutch, similar to most of Kawasaki's range. For 2022, Kawasaki have added 3 engine maps that you can change via the TFT dash. I'm often inclined to just chuck it in the highest output mode on other bikes that I test, but the H2 SX gets quite wild in F-Power mode. The middle engine map is still madly quick, but it adds even more low-down rideability. I'll admit that I did spend quite some time just revving the bike out in low gears to hear the wastegate chatter, but this thing is pretty thirsty. The range would plummet while thrashing it, and I can't think of any other bike I've filled up more than a H2 SX during a 2-week test. Kawasaki claim you'll get 5.4 litres per 100 Ks, but I got more like 7 to 8 litres per 100 Ks. And even when Jeff tested the bike back in 2018, he was peaking at about 10 litres per 100 Ks. The 16-valve 998cc supercharged 4-cylinder makes 200 horsepower at 11,000 RPM and 137.3 Newton meters at 8,500 RPM. It's seriously just such a wild engine to put on a touring bike, but man, is it great. The real star of the show with the 2022 model is the electronics. When I'm not on bikes, I'm testing cars, and a lot of the technology seen on the H2 SX has graced the car world for years. However, Kawasaki are the first to fully apply it to motorcycles. Starting with the most obvious change, just by looking at the H2 SX, it features adaptive cruise control. Using a radar hidden in the nose cone, when you set the cruise control, the bike will automatically reduce speed while approaching a car in front. I found the system to work quite well, but I'm not too stoked on the space of intervention, especially in Australia where it seems to be a trend to travel down the freeway at 25 kilometers an hour under the speed limit. You can change the distance the radar allows through the dash, but even the closest setting is quite far away. The front radar is also used to detect an accident about to happen. If the bike senses an imminent accident, it'll start flashing red up on the screen. Now the rear radar is bloody awesome. I've head checked before and had cars seemingly appear out of nowhere when I go to change lanes. The rear radar will sense if a car is sitting in your blind spot and show a small orange triangle on the side mirrors. A feature that's been on cars for years, yet Kawasaki are the first to put it on the bike. The only real issue I had with the rear radar is that it's contained within the chunky ADR approved plate holder. The first thing that gets replaced on my personal bikes is that plate holder and a tail tidy is put on. Does this mean that you have to choose between a blind spot indicator and a tail tidy? I spent a few days in the Road Rider profile getting a feel for the assists in their standard form before I decided it was time to muck around. The 6-axis IMU system is awesome. The assists don't have a noticeable intervention when they're switched on. Sitting down with a cup of tea as I read the owner's manual to set up the custom profile, I set the rider mode to all assists off and the bike transformed into this absolutely wild animal. With no assists, the engine is what I'd imagine the light switch power of a 500cc 2-stroke GP bike is like. If the front wheel isn't in the air, the rear tyre is spinning. It is quite fun as the bike tries to throw you off the best as it can, but maturity kicks in and at the absolute minimum you should really switch to a low TCS. The levels of intervention with the traction control are spot on. I like my TCS set for medium intervention on most bikes as it allows for some rear wheel slip and small power wheelies without any hairy situations. However, I did have 2 moments hitting the local twisties while they were still patchy. Just corner exit and that light switch supercharged mid-range power made the bike snap into a slide before the TCS put me back in line. Another assist that made its way from the car world is the vehicle hold assist. Being that the bike is 260 kilograms without panniers, the fact Kawasaki added hill stop assist shows that they listen to their customers. The VHA makes taking off from the lights on hills an absolute breeze. You simply push down harder on the rear brake and it will lock you in until you start to move, allowing you to place both feet down for a stable takeoff. Other gadgets include launch control, which to be honest, I couldn't figure out how to activate, emergency stop signals that flash your rear lights during sudden stops, cornering lights, and the dreaded keyless system. I will admit I am pretty disappointed with the keyless start system, as during the photo shoot I gave the key to the photographer while my backpack was off and there were 0 warnings that I had ridden off without the key. It wasn't a short distance either, so losing the key out of your pocket and not being able to restart your bike is a real possibility. The chassis is an interesting one. Touring on it is awesome and it complements that supercharged powerhouse so unbelievably well. You don't sit like how you would on the sports bike. The rider triangle is closer to a naked bike than anything, as the seat is quite low and the bars are higher than conventional clip-ons. What I begin to notice through the first few corners is that weight. The bike is
tough to tip into corners and really wants to stay upright. It's quite a weird sensation as you expect it to fall from side to side, but you just end up climbing off the bike in a bid to get it to lean. I'm by no means saying it's not a fun weekend blast, but don't expect it to handle the same way as the ZX-10R. The stock setting on the USD forks are awesome while touring, but hitting the twisties has me considering stiffening the front end. It's just that weight that exaggerates things such as diving under braking and compression as the front wheel comes down from a wheelie. The rear end is spectacular for a non-active setup. The only bikes above the H2 SX in terms of rear shock all use an electronic setup. This really sings praises to what Kawasaki have done to the rear end in 2022. Touring is no worries, and even getting to the twisties, the setup is just spectacular. For touring and twisties, active suspension would shine on this bike. Kawasaki have KECS, which is Kawasaki Electronics Control Suspension, and it's quite strange that they haven't added it to the H2 SX. Given the low rideaway price, they could have tacked another 10k on and added active suspension as an offer while still having this awesome price. I could yap on for hours about how good this bike is. When people ask me what my favourite bike I've ridden, the 2022 H2 SX is on the very short list I tell them. The price is fair, and I can't think of a bike that has this spectacular of an engine combined with all the extensive electronics that can beat the $35,947 rideaway price tag. The suspension, while extraordinary, and weight, which is understandable given what category this bike fits into, are really the only two things that let the bike down from a perfect 10 out of 10 score with me. The H2 SX is the only press bike I've seriously sat down and considered dipping into my savings to buy it instead of giving it back to Kawasaki. I think it's in a league of its own in so many aspects that the only thing that held me back from buying it was my bank account.
So we're just back here at the Bike Review HQ garage. I'm going to run you through a few of the electronics on this TFT dash they've got. So for starters, there is no key. You have a key fob that you press down and then twist on. It's quite short range, so you don't need to worry too much about security or anything like that. So for starters, we have 4 preset rider profiles. We've got sport mode. You hold down the mode button on the left hand part of the handlebars, and that will click you into road mode, which is like a sort of a lower engine map power. It's a lower power map. It's got a bit higher intervention on the traction control and assist. Then we go into rain, which is even lower. And then finally we have the rider mode. Now this will turn off the Kawasaki traction control, which is the KTRC. We've got the blind spot detectors turned off, as well as the emergency collision warning on the dash that the radars use. And yeah, so you've kind of got this bare bones. It will also set the power to maximum, power F, and you've got this bare bones setting. But it goes a bit deeper than that with Kawasaki's changes. So if we want to go change a few things, we go hold down the mode button, press the mode button once, sorry. And we have the option to connect to Kawasaki Spin app. Now, I will say that this is slightly dated, but with the technology that is coming through at the moment, it is hard to keep it up to date. Best thing Kawasaki could have done is to go with a Apple CarPlay or Android CarPlay, or the equivalent of Android on this, and that way it's an external system that can be updated through the phone and it stays current rather than Kawasaki using their Spin app. But it is still a good little system to use. I didn't use it because I had to keep my phone unlocked in my pocket, and it didn't really serve any purpose because I didn't want to run out of battery too quickly. Now we go into vehicle settings. We've got shift lamp, which is obviously what you saw when I was revving the bike. And we've got the quick shifter, and for some reason in rider mode it has been turned off, so we can turn that back on. we've got the KEBC, which is the Kawasaki engine braking control. That'll just allow you to change how much engine braking it has. Adaptive cruise control. Now, I will say, when it comes to the adaptive cruise control, it has a little bit too much intervention. So you will see a car up ahead, and then next thing you know, the bike will start slowing down at quite a high rate of speed. You got medium, and even near was quite. Well, I know I'm slightly more aggressive rider, but near was a little bit too much intervention, and especially coming from a car review perspective, it was still too far away to keep up with the flow of traffic. So we click reset. We've got all these. So we've got cornering lights, which are turned off for rider mode. We've got forward collision warning, which is turned off for rider mode, and the blind spot detector. Now we click reset again. We go into the rider mode settings. So this is where you will be able to change what you want out of your rider mode. So this is sort of your preset mode. So we've got power F, which is F for fast, medium, and low. Click reset. We got the Kawasaki traction control, and we can actually add that in to the rider mode, but you've already got presets in sport and road mode, so there's no real need to have traction control set on your rider mode. But it is quite a wild bike when it comes to not having the traction control set. It has caught me out a few times, coming onto the power a little bit too much, and the rear end will start to lose traction. Obviously here we've got a few changes you can make. Nothing you will necessarily need to change. But yeah, so that's the basic gist of the dash. Here we can set up what we want. You got lean angle. We got tire pressure monitors, which are new for 2022. They're quite an awesome thing to have, especially for touring, so you don't have to pull over and check your PSI. Boost, so that'll go up to 200% once you hit full boost. Not that you should be looking down at the dash while you have the throttle twisted all the way. And you can pretty much just configure your settings. Here I had a little boost gauge with a lean, forward and rear lean sensor. We've got boost and brake, boost and throttle, and the G-force that I had on. And yeah, it's all quite simple, really.
That's all for our 2022 Kawasaki H2 SX video review. If you want a more in-depth look at the bike, then you can head to BikeReview.com.au and you can check out all of our reviews there, including past H2s, different H2 models, and this one. Thanks for watching, and if you liked the video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more bike tests.